want to find that drive and focus that has you locked in and on fire every single day, my book, The Mirror of Motivation, will do it for you. I bought a copy for you. You take care of the shipping. The book is free. Click the link down there. I got you.
DreAllDay.com.
Gets no better than where you are right now, tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. This is the go-getter energy that moves me, you, every one person next to you to action, to go make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all of this together: discipline, confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative into one package. And what you get is the mindset, the method, the philosophy, the podcast, the book, known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day. Welcome to the show. Today's topic is what you can do today. Do it today. This is about urgency. That's what today's topic is about. It's about developing and maintaining and reminding yourself when you need to of your sense of urgency. Leaders, people who get in a position where others are following you voluntarily, and those of you who get into positions of power where you have influence, where people will do what you say to do, where people will go where you say to go, people will do what they see you doing, and they will say what they see you saying. If you want to be that person, that leader, or that person of power, or a combination of both, you must become a person who acts with urgency and does not put things off. Leaders and people of power act with urgency. Think of the people that you know who you would consider to be leaders. Think of the most powerful people that you know by your definition of power. Who are the most powerful people you know? I guarantee they're also the most action biased individuals that you know. They are the people who don't put things off just to put things off. The aim of today's talk is to move you to moving faster and utilizing time rather than merely taking your time. You ever hear someone say that? Take your time. Take your time means just take the time and do nothing with it. Just waste it. But time is the most valuable resource we have in life. All right. When you run out of time, you run out of life. It's all over when you run out of time. So today's topic is about utilizing time, making the most of the time that you have, none of us know how much time we actually have, making the most of what we do have, rather than just taking our time and doing absolutely nothing with it, which is what most people do when they say take their time. Point number one. Today's topic is what you can do today. Do it today. Most people have this bad habit of adding time to their decisions. You know what I mean? When there's a decision that person needs to make, they like to add time to the decision-making process. They don't want to make a decision right now on the spot, right now, today. Why? Why make a decision today when I can make a decision tomorrow? Why make a decision right now when I can do it later? Do I have to do it right now? Does it have to be so urgent at this very moment? Why can't I do it tomorrow? What's the rush for doing it right now? Let me think about it. I need to take some time. I don't need to make it. I don't need to do it right instantly in this moment. If you ever used any of these phrases or heard someone use these, this is a habit of adding time to your decisions. Because if you used it once, you probably use it a lot. And people don't add time to their decisions because they're incapable of making a decision. They can make a decision. They're very capable. And it's also not because they don't have all the necessary information. Most people just like to take their time. People add time to their decision-making process because people just like to take time. People just like to take time and not do anything with it. Now, is there a time to do nothing with time? Is there a time to meditate and lay on the beach and smell the flowers? Sure. But that time is not all the time. And this show is called Work on Your Game. So I would assume that you understand that what we're going to talk about here is going to lean more towards getting things done. It's going to lean more towards action. It's going to lean more towards activity and utilization of energy. All right, not relaxation and smelling the roses. Okay. Most people just like to take their time. Most people like to move slowly, think everything out into minute details, most of which these details don't even matter to the decision-making process. This is what most people do. And people do this so they can buy time and they can give themselves space to think. But why? Why do people need to buy time? Why do people need to give themselves space to think? It's not because they really need to think about it. It's not because they really need as much time as most of us, most of you take when you're making a decision. We do this so we can avoid messing up. We can avoid making a mistake. Or we can avoid coming to the wrong conclusion. But we already talked about just recently. I talked to you about stop avoiding things. Stop trying to avoid outcomes that you don't want. Because when you're trying to avoid it, you're thinking about it. And when you think about something, you attract it. When you attract it, you usually get it. And on top of that, none of us is perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect human being. There's no such thing as a perfect plan that is perfectly executed, that everything works out perfect. No such thing. So when you're trying to avoid messing up, you're trying to avoid making a mistake, you're trying to avoid coming to the wrong conclusion, you usually end up doing it, number one. Number two, you end up wasting a whole lot of time trying to make your plans perfect when it's impossible to make your plans perfect. So if you're trying to make your plans perfect, you have stumbled upon the perfect plan for wasting time. So if you're trying to waste time, you can make a perfect plan. All you gotta do is just keep giving yourself reasons to, quote, think about it, close quote. Here's the problem with trying to avoid messing up, making a mistake, coming to the wrong conclusion. No process is going to be perfect. Most of the time, you won't make a decision if you won't make a decision that is right, or you won't know that the decision is right until the decision has been executed upon, until you actually start doing something with the decision that you made. Then once you start doing something, you'll start to see the results of your actions, and then you can edit your plans accordingly. But you can't edit a plan. It wouldn't make sense to start editing a plan that you haven't executed on yet, because you don't even know if the plan works or not. So what are you making edits for? You don't know if the plan that you have may be the best one you could possibly have. You start making edits before you take action. How do you even know that's the right thing to do? You got to do something first to know whether your plans are sound. So this is the problem that many people have, is just adding time to a situation, trying to reach a point that it's impossible for a human being to reach, because none of us is perfect. Most people never get to the step of editing their plans after taking action, because most people never actually take action. Most people lose all of their opportunity, and they waste a whole lot of time in deliberation and delay. How about you? Know any people who they're always deliberating? You get them, they got to make a decision. They just spend a whole lot of time thinking about it, trying to figure it out, wondering what they could do, wondering what they should do, looking at every option, seeing what everybody else has done in the past, allowing themselves more and more time to think about it. And those who do end up finally making a decision, and they take action very slowly, they finally do take action, but when they do, they finally make a decision and they're slowly moving into action. You know what they end up doing, those people? Well, what do you end up doing when you add time to a decision-making process and you think about it for a long time and you finally come to a conclusion? What is it that you actually end up doing? Usually end up doing the exact damn thing that you thought of initially. The exact thing that you could have did 3 weeks ago, you end up doing it 3 weeks later after you thought about it. You had to think about it, you end up doing the same thing that you were going to do the first time. Or if you weren't going to do it, you spend all that time thinking about it, knowing that the answer was no, but it took you 3 weeks to say no, even though the answer was no 2 minutes into the first time you came across the possibility. This is what most of us do. We lose all our opportunity in deliberation and delay. You end up moving too slow. The leaders, the people of power who move quickly, take all the opportunity off the table that would have been yours had you been able to move yourself to action a whole lot quicker. That's what today's whole episode is about. You usually end up doing the same thing later that you would have done initially had you trusted your instincts, trusted your gut, and just took yourself to move to action, knowing that you probably are not going to be perfect. You're probably not going to be 100% correct, but that's all right, because you'll figure it out as you move along. Most of the time, we won't have enough information just by thinking about something to make sure it's right. You got to do something to know what's right, what's wrong, and to make your adjustments. Point number 2. Today's topic is what you can do today, do it today. The hardest thing for many of us, hardest thing for many people in this world these days, is doing today what we don't, quote, have to, close quote, do today. Now, how many of you are guilty of this? There's something that you could do today. You could just knock it out right now and have it finished with a day early, a week early, now before there's even a deadline. You could do that, but you just don't. And why? Why don't you do it? Because for what? I mean, what's the rush? Why do I need to do something early? Why do I need to do it now when it's not even due? I need to do this paper now when it's not due until Friday. Why do I need to take care of this situation today when the deadline is not for another 30 days? Why do I need to do this? Why do I need to pay this bill early when I can pay it the actual day that it's due? Why do I need to do anything early rather than just do it on time? I'll just do things on time. Well, everyone here, and I'm not going to assume everyone, but many of you have heard the saying that to be on time, to be early rather, is to be on time. To be on time is to be late, and to be late is to be forgotten. In other words, those who know what they're doing, people who are leaders, people who are in positions of power, they do things early, not because they're just trying to show off and be early. They do things early because to them, early is the only time to get things done. Early is on time. Their version of on time is to be early. The person who does things just on time, if someone says this is due on Friday and you actually do it on Friday, that's doing things on time. Understand that's what most people do. Now, I would assume that if you're listening to a show called Work on Your Game, you've been listening to the show consistently for any period of time, that you're not trying to do the same thing that most people do. But maybe you never considered this. So I'm giving you this angle here today. So now, because I'm giving it to you, because you heard me say it, now you're responsible for the information. You're responsible for the actions that you take based on this information from this point forward, is that most people do things on time, so to speak. So if something's due at 3 o'clock, they do it at 3 o'clock. If somebody says, get this done by Friday, they get it done by Friday. That's what most people do. That's on time. All right. That's what we would expect. Right. But I just told you early is on time. On time is late, and late is left behind. So if you really want to be on time, you need to change your idea of what on time means. So if someone says, meet me at 9 o'clock, don't get there at 9 o'clock. Get there at 8:45, 15 minutes early. Why? One of my high school health teacher, he used to always say that whenever you get a job interview, get there 15 minutes early so that you know that they know that you're thinking about it. That was his reasoning for why you need to get there early. So that you know that they know that you're thinking about it and you took it seriously enough to get there early. I was watching this TV show called The Wire. Those of you who watched The Wire, maybe you remember this, that there was I don't even need to go too deep into the plot, but there were some guys who were known as being killers on the street. They would actually take people's lives with their guns. And there was a battle that was about to happen. There was a gunfight or some kind of confrontation that was soon to take place on a particular day. But one of the guys who was going to be involved in this, he knew that there was some plot against him. So he got there to the place where everything was going to go down. He actually showed up to the location a whole day early, just to scope out the scene, to see what was going on, see how people were setting up, see if anything abnormal was going on the block. Why? Because he wanted to be early because life depended on it. First of all, being early, and second of all, because that's what leaders do. That's what people who get in positions of power do. Yes, even people who kill people on fictional TV shows on HBO, they understand this principle. Getting there early is on time. You get there on time, you're already late, because the people who are serious, the leaders, the people who are in power, they already got there way before you, and all the opportunity that you thought would get there if you got there on time is completely gone. There's a strawberry farm in South Florida. There's several of them, but there's one in particular called Niles Berry Farm. I go there every fall. It's opens around Thanksgiving and it closes around Easter every single year. That's the strawberry season, I suppose. When this place first opens, like the opening weekend of Niles Berry Farm in South Florida, anyone who has been there, you can attest to this. The opening weekend, the line to get to the bakery is so long. And mind you, Niles Berry Farm is old school. They don't even take credit cards. All right, so there's no Uber Eats. You cannot order delivery. There's no Grubhub, none of that. You have to go there physically and you have to pay with cash. All right, no credit cards, no Apple Pay, none of that. Now there's a strawberry field in the back, but early in the season, strawberries usually are not ready till about January. So the bakery is the thing that makes them all their money for the first couple of months. At the bakery, where they sell these cinnamon sticky buns that are amazing. If you like cinnamon sticky buns, you need to come to Miami just to get some cinnamon sticky buns. They got a whole bunch of other things in there. The line is so long. I remember one day I stood in this line for 4 hours. That's how long the line was. It doesn't seem like it's that long until you stand there and then an hour goes by, then 2, and then you're like, man, I stood here so long. It's like a sunk cost. I got to stay here. And before you know it, you have been in that line 4 hours. It doesn't look like you're going to be in line for 4 hours when you get there. But after you stand there for 4 hours, you realize, damn, I've actually been in this line for 4 hours. The point that I'm making here, the reason I even brought up Niles Berry Farm is that if you get there when the place opens, I remember I got there when the place opened it was opening week. It was the week of Thanksgiving. So I believe it was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's always on a Thursday, right? So that Wednesday, I drove down to Niles Berry Farm. It's about a 30-minute drive from where I live. I got there when it opened, 8 o'clock. The line was about 3 hours long worth of people at the opening moment. Why? Because early is on time. On time is late and late is forgotten. Now, what I did that day, I did not stand in line for 3 hours. I stood in line for 3 or 4 hours twice ever. And then after that, I decided to get a little bit smarter. So I saw a guy who was near the front of the line. He was probably about 10 minutes away from being at the front of the line. I walked right up to him and said, listen, I'll give you $10 for you to keep if you just buy my stuff for me. He said, sure, no problem. He took my $10, got me my stuff, and I bought myself 3 hours of time with $10. What's that? $3.33 an hour. Is it worth it? I would say so. That's an investment. Anyway, the point that I'm making here is this is the essence of urgency, is being early. We're moving on to point number 2. This hardest thing is to do today what they don't have to do today. To be early when they don't have to be early. This is the essence of having a sense of urgency. Most of us being human, we are lazy. And we are looking to conserve energy at all times. That's just our wiring as human beings. We are designed to try to conserve energy, to not do things if we don't have to do things. Most people don't move themselves to action until circumstance forces them to move themselves to action. When you think of the most powerful people you know, the leaders that you know in life, these are people who, and you can tell me if I got this right, these are people who move themselves to action even though nothing in their circumstance is forcing them to move. They do it anyway. That's what sense of urgency is about. Doing it anyway, even though there's no reason for you to rush. There's no reason for you to do it now. There's no reason for you to be early. You could just get there on time. You could just get there later. You could do this never. You could get it whenever. You could do it whenever. That's what most people do. If you're not trying to be like most people, then you need to take every time I tell you what most people do, you need to ask yourself, how can I do the opposite? All right, and I'm going to tell you, but you should be asking yourself this question before I even get to saying it. This is the essence of urgency, to do what other people are not doing. If you want to get what others don't have, you have to do what other people won't do. You've heard that before, right? And this is a big one. Moving yourself to action, even when you don't quite feel like moving, and or there is no, quote, reason, close quote, to do it now. This is what we call an action bias. Episode number 1199. I talked about having an action bias in life. What is an action bias? It means if you are in a neutral position where you could do something and you could do nothing, you are leaning towards doing something. Why? Because that's just the way that you are. Action bias. Then there's the inaction bias, where you could do something, you could do nothing, you decide to do nothing. That's what most people do. Inaction. Most people have an inaction bias. They are looking for reasons to do nothing. All right, that's the inaction bias. Looking for reasons to not take action. The action bias is a person who's looking for reasons to take action. They're looking for ways to make an impact. They're looking for reasons and ways and options for taking initiative, utilizing their personal initiative, going and getting it, making things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. You got to ask yourself, which one are you right now? Which one are you going to be starting today, moving forward? Point number 3. Today's topic is what you can do today, do it today. People are often seeking higher levels of productivity. I've had people ask me, Dre, how can I be more productive? What are your best tips for being productive? I have all these things going on and I need to increase/improve my productivity. What can I do to be more productive? Now, while there is a need at times in life for us to examine what we're being productive at, there is one simple understanding. The simple understanding is this. The more that we get done, the more we can get done. That's simple enough, right? The more things you complete, the more things you can begin and subsequently complete. If you have a whole bunch of projects in your life, whether they be in your mind, whether they're papers on your desk, whether they're just things that you started and not finished all around the world, if you have all these projects that are left undone, it becomes harder and harder to move on to a new project and the next project. The reason being is that every time you start something and don't finish it, every time you don't come to a conclusion with the things that you begin, you lose a little bit of trust in yourself to even finish things. You don't trust yourself enough to start something because you know what happened the last 3 times you started something. You don't trust yourself to begin this project because you know what happened on your last project. You don't trust yourself to say or to commit to completing this one because you know you didn't complete the last one or the one before that or the one before that. And if other people start to know you as this, that's even worse. Or let's say it's equally worse. It's equally bad. All right, if you don't trust yourself, that's probably worse than other people not trusting you. But if other people don't trust you, that can also hinder and hamper you in many ways as well. I think we can agree. It's hard to move on to the next thing if you haven't finished the last thing. It makes it much harder to take initiative if you know the last time you took initiative, it didn't turn out too well for you. And this is all about the internal conversation you're having with yourself. And the internal conversation is not just about the things you say to yourself and the things that you listen to on a podcast. It's also about the actions that you take. Because every time you take a certain action, you are reinforcing to your subconscious, this is the type of person I am. I'm the type of person that does this. I'm the type of person that hesitates, type of person that does nothing, type of person that has an inaction bias, the type of person who does things on time where everybody else doesn't, with the masses of people, most people. You could be telling yourself that through your actions. You also could tell yourself, I'm the type of person with an action bias. If I have a choice of doing nothing and doing something, I'm finding something to do because I'm an action biased person. I'm a person of action. I'd rather do something than talk about something. I'd rather do something than do nothing. I'm a person who completes the things that I start. I'm a person who, when I see an opportunity, I go after it. I'm a person who, when I need an opportunity, I create it. Every time you take an action, you are giving yourself this internal dialogue without saying a word. So it's much harder to take initiative when you've been failing at completing your initiative, following through with your initiative in the past. Productivity, ladies and gentlemen, means one thing. It means producing. If you're not producing anything, then you can't be productive. To produce something means you got to bring it to a conclusion. You can't produce a report for me if the report's not finished. You can't produce by giving me a sales presentation if you haven't put together all the slides. You can't produce to giving me a report on what's been going on in your department at the company if nothing's going on in your department at the company. There's no report to give me because there's nothing to tell. There's no information to give. If you want to be more productive, all you must do is produce more results where you are right now. Whatever you're doing right now, whatever you're working on, whatever project, whatever industry, whatever you're focused on right now, you need to produce more results there. Understand, result means something has to be brought to a conclusion. What's the result of a basketball game? We look at the scoreboard, there's all zeros on the clock at the end of the fourth quarter or overtime. Now we know the result of the game. You can't tell me the result of something in the third quarter. You can't tell me the result in the first quarter. You can't tell me the result of a football game at halftime. Now you can predict it, you can bet on it, but we don't know for sure until we get to the end of the game. So unless you get to the end of the games that you are beginning, you can't produce any results. And everyone out there who's trying to be more productive, you want to produce more results and better results, well, first you got to start bringing things to a conclusion. If you're not doing that, it's probably because you don't have this action bias, because you're putting things off that you should be doing today. You're putting them off until tomorrow. And we know that when you put things off until later, you know what later eventually turns to? Later kind of oxidizes itself. You know what later eventually turns into? Turns into never. And you may know that very well. Maybe you know some people who know that very well. Let's recap today's topic, which is what you can do today, do it today. This topic is really about having a sense of urgency, because any leader, any person of power is a person who acts with urgency and doesn't put things off. And that's the whole aim of what we're talking about here today. Point number one, most people had a bad habit of adding time to decisions, not because they can't make a decision and not because they don't have the information to make a decision. Is most people just like to take their time. Most people like to move slow, think everything out. And they do this to buy time and space to think. But why? They do it so they can avoid making mistakes. The problem is no human is perfect. Everybody's going to make mistakes. So if you're trying to avoid mistakes, you'll never do anything. This is what most people do. They usually end up doing nothing. And those who do delay and finally take action do the same thing that they thought about 3 months ago that they could have done back then. Point number two, hardest thing for many people is doing today what they don't have to do today. They don't see any real reason. In other words, they're saying there's nothing in this circumstance crowding in on me, forcing me to action today. Therefore, I'm not going to do anything until something is forcing me to take action. This is how most people live their entire lives. They don't do anything until circumstance forces them to do something. This is the essence of having a sense of urgency, is to be the opposite of that. Now, if you'll get only one thing from this episode, I just gave it to you in that sentence. Most of us as humans, we look to conserve energy. We are naturally lazy. It's just our wiring. But if you want to get what other people don't have, you must do what other people don't do. Move yourself to action, even when you don't feel like it, even when there's no, quote, reason, close quote, forcing you to do so. This is the action bias. Listen to episode 1199 to learn more about that. And point number three, people often seek higher levels of productivity, whatever that means to you. While there is a need for us to sometimes slow down and examine this productivity thing, this is a good thing to be going after, producing, because you know what most people do? They sit down and smell the roses and do nothing. So if you want to separate yourself from other people, producing something at a high level will help you do it, as long as it's positive, as long as it's legal. But it's hard to take initiative if you have all these projects that are left undone. The way to get a project done is to produce a result. Get to the end of it. Even if it doesn't work out, even if it ends up being a failing project, at least bring it to its conclusion so that you know you're trusting yourself to know that when you start something, you are going to finish it. Every action that you take, not just the words you say, but the actions that you take are an internal conversation you're having with yourself. If you are not able to produce results, then you're not going to trust yourself to produce results. It's going to be much harder to take initiative and start things because you know you're not going to finish them. Productivity, ladies and gentlemen, means producing things. If you want to be more productive, produce more results where you are right now. Speaking of producing, my book, The Mirror of Motivation, is subtitled The Self-Guide to Self-Discipline. You want to bring yourself to be disciplined enough to start things and actually finish them, to bring them to conclusions. This is the book that's going to help you do it, and I'm giving it to you completely for free. So go to mirrorofmotivation.com. That is mirrorofmotivation.com. Get my book, The Mirror of Motivation, The Self-Guide to Self-Discipline, completely free. All you got to do is take care of the shipping. Tell me where to ship it. Claim your copy while they are available. Again, the link, mirrorofmotivation.com. Free book, The Mirror of Motivation. Work on your game. Dre all day.